On today's episode of Time About the Movies, we're taking a look at Labor Day weekend 2011, and we have Helen Mirren, Sam Worthington, and Jessica Chastain starring in The Debt. A pair of horror movies for you, including Apollo 18, the latest found footage film, this time in space. I don't know how to do that for this particular thing, but Apollo 18, plus we have Shark Night, and not just any Shark Night in 3D. That at least I know how to do. And then we have a good old-fashioned orgy. Literally the title of the movie, and it might actually be the best film we have this entire weekend. Maybe not. We'll see. September 2nd, 2011, today on Time About the Movies. And welcome to Time About the Movies. Today we are taking a look at the four films that make up September 2nd, 2011. And our first movie that we have here is called The Debt. It's an espionage thriller that begins in 1997 as shocking news reaches retired Mossad secret agents Rachel Singer, played by Helen Mirren, and Stephen Gold, played by Tom Wilkinson, about their former colleague David Perez, played by Kieran Hines. All three have been venerated for decades by their country because of the mission that was taking place back in 1965. Well, the trio, played then by Jessica Chastain, Martin Secaucus, and also Sam Worthington, tracked down Nazi war criminal Dieter Vogel, played by Jesper Christensen, in East Berlin. At great risk and at a considerable personal cost, the team's mission was accomplished. Or was it? The suspense builds in across two different time periods with startling action and surprising revelations. That's how they're selling it to you, but hey, it's written by Matthew Vaughn and Jane Goldman of Kick-Ass fame, and written by Peter Strahan, who would later go on to write Conclave, and directed by John Madden, the guy who directed Shakespeare in Love, which was a Best Picture winner. Not a great Best Picture winner, but still. Now, what's interesting is that this film had already been released in several various film festivals the year before, but it didn't make its way to theaters until 2011, and, this was actually one of the last places that it actually got to, because it was first released in France, then it was released in Kazakhstan and Russia, and then it made it to the US, Canada, and India, and, kind of like with The American the year before, a movie that nobody really ever talked about, and it kind of came and was actually a big hit, and it was actually not a bad movie. This is kind of the same thing. It came out on Labor Day weekend. Was a surprise hit. Was well received by critics, and when you really look at it, it's not a bad movie at all. It's an overall enjoyable film with a lot of really good talent involved in the cast. I mean, you have two generations of actors in here. The time jumps get a little distracting at times, and it's hard to buy Jessica Chastain as a younger version of Helen Mirren's character. I mean, that just seems like. It feels like they're really grasping for straws there. Like, you could probably buy Tom Wilkinson and Sam Worthington are the same person, but other than that, though, yeah, the rest of it is just kind of like, was it Sam Worthington? Yeah, it was Sam. It was Sam Worthington as Kieran Hines, which, yeah, that I could buy into. Tom Wilkinson and Martin Secaucus, I don't know if I'd be able to buy them at the same age. I mean, they could possibly be done, but the only one I was really baffled with was Jessica Chastain and Helen Mirren. That felt like they were pushing it a little bit there, but because the movie is so compelling and you do get invested in the scenarios going on, you do kind of let it push to the side a little bit. Then you can actually find a lot of enjoyment in the film with the idea of, this whole thing about these two, essentially, these two different generations trying to figure out what is this one older generation trying to have memories of what happened in the past overall. And like I said, I thought it was a very good film. I thought it was a very compelling movie. I won't say it's a great film by any means necessary, but I think it's a good film overall. It's on that same wavelength as The American the year before. Not one that's going to win any awards in general or should be considered for awards contention, but a pretty fun thriller overall. One I definitely recommend checking out. So let's go ahead and jump into space with our next movie, and that is Apollo 18.
Apollo 18.
Yeah, let's just call this what this really is. Somebody saw the success of Paranormal Activity and said, oh, we gotta make a movie about something like that too. Let's have Paranormal Activity take place in space and make up this story about how Apollo 18 was actually a thing that we put up in space, but nobody ever knew about it until now, and that's the reason why we've never gone back to the moon. Sure, let's go with that. That's literally the plot of the movie. Two astronauts are assigned to a special mission to the moon. Walker and Anderson land while Gray stays in orbit. and they collect samples and they find footprints. It's actually three astronauts, I should say. They collect samples, they find footprints, and the body of a Soviet cosmonaut on the moon. Soon they hear weird noises and find that they're not alone. Because you're in space. Yeah, there is literally no lack of suspense in this whatsoever. I mean, the concept overall isn't a bad concept. I mean, doing a found footage movie in space, which could be good, but this has a lot of the same problems with a lot of found footage movies that were trying to cash in on Paranormal Activity's tail, and it's just simply the fact that it's not scary, it's not intriguing, it's them trying way too hard to copy something that worked so well with the first couple of Paranormal Activity movies, and you have people trying to copy that success, and if you don't have the same talents there, and are just recopying the same elements of Paranormal Activity, except putting it in a different setting, that's not a selling point to your movie, and it's not scary at all. Like, everything that happens in here is not scary, it is not thrilling, the chills are not there, you don't care about these characters whatsoever. There's just nothing about this movie that works at all. It's just a lazy film, a film that's trying to ride the coattails of Paranormal Activity, and it just isn't working in the long run. It just, yeah, you can see why this film never went anywhere afterwards. So, yeah, just a bad film, a bad idea, an idea that could have been good, but wasted on a really lackluster script. This movie should not have been put in theaters. This was something that was put in theaters strictly because Paranormal Activity was the hot shit, and everyone wanted to have their Paranormal Activity success, and this was not it. So, and just like everybody else was trying to create the next Piranha 3D, here's Shark Night in 3D.
Shark Night 3D, rated PG-13, also showing in 2D.
Yes, because a movie called Shark Night 3D is something that people want to see in 2D. So please, make that notification there that you can watch this in 2D, even though the fucking title of the movie is Shark Night 3D. And do I even need to tell you what the plot of this movie is? This is a movie that is simply a plot you can see coming a mile away. It's stupid teenagers going on a vacation in a remote place and area where there's where they have the place all themselves, and they realize there's a whole bunch of sharks all over the place ready to devour every single one of them. Gee, haven't heard that plot before. I mean, this is about what you expect for a movie like this, and it has some notable names in there: Sarah Paxton, Catherine McPhee from American Idol, Joel David Moore, of course, from the Avatar movies. Notably, this was directed by David R. Ellis, who's the same guy that gave us the Final Destination 2, and the Final Destination. And this is the last thing he directed, because I completely forgot that he is no longer with us. He died, actually, not but 18 months after this movie came out. He died in January 2013. His death's been, he died in like his hotel room in Johannesburg, South Africa, and they've never said what the cause of death was, and said no foul play was suspected. So yeah, it's still one of those deaths that nobody really knows about and all that. But that's weird. That's interesting. I never knew that this was the last thing he directed, and the guy has not been a bad director. He's actually directed stuff that I've liked. Homeward Bound 2, Lost in San Francisco, Final Destination 2, The Final Destination, Snakes on a Plane was probably one of his worst films. Cellular was probably one of his more underrated movies, but this is definitely one of those ones where you could see what it is coming a mile away. If you don't know what you're going into it for, then you deserve to be disappointed by what you're going to see, because yeah, unless you know going into it, you know you're going to see an over-the-top, cheesy shark movie, and this time it's in 3D, excuse me. Yeah, there's no reason to check this movie out. If you don't like shark movies before, you're not going to like this in general. And it is a movie made for specifically the people that love the bad shark knockoff movies. These are the people that love Sharknado. That's who the target audience for this movie is. And I don't like the Sharknado movies. In fact, the first Sharknado is one of the worst films I've ever seen. So I think you can figure out how I feel about this movie. Not a fan. Not a fan of it at all. But I see the audience for it, so hey, have the time of your life. So let's go ahead and get on to our last movie that we have here, and it is surprisingly the best film we have this entire weekend, and it is a good old-fashioned orgy.
We're gonna have an orgy.
Ew!
I mean, that segment alone perfectly describes the entire movie for you, and who knew it was actually one of the best movie that came out this weekend, easily, and shockingly one of the best R-rated comedies that came out this year. I mean, think about all the comedies we've had this year, not just R-rated films, but just comedies in general. A lot of them have been major disappointments. Stuff like The Change Up, Friends with Benefits. What was another one we looked at that was pretty bad? Hell, The Dilemma, Your Highness, Paul, half of these Universal comedies that that have come out this year, most of them have not been that great. And this is one of those ones that kind of just came out of the blue. No one really knew about it for the longest time. It was released limitedly in theaters, but I'm really glad I found it because it was surprisingly really good. And it follows you got Jason Sudeikis playing Eric, who was having was throwing parties at his father's house for years, and decides to have one last party with the house to be sold. And his basic idea is to simply have an orgy, and he's having it with all of his friends who they've had sex before, but clearly have never had the concept of an orgy, and that's kind of the fun of this movie. You have a cast that includes some notable names in here: Michelle Borth from Bones and Hawaii Five-O, Nick Kroll, Tyler Labine, Lindsay Sloan, Lucy Punch, Will Forte, Martin Starr, Angela Seraphine, Lake Bell, Leslie Bibb, Don Johnson, Lynn Shay. Just a lot of notable names here. This is directed by the same people who did The Virginity Hit the year before, which was a surprisingly good movie. But this right here, I thought was a ton of fun. I just love how they've had sex before, but they are so inept on the concept of what an orgy is and how to have a successful orgy in this house. And when they actually get to the orgy itself, it does lead to a lot of silly, fun, over-the-top moments in it. I think it's a very fun film. It knows exactly what it's trying to do, and it does lead to a lot of really good, funny moments and a lot of silly, ridiculous stuff. It reminds me of an old-school 80s comedy in the veins of something like Fast Times at Ridgemont High, or something like, what was another... Animal House was 70s, but you get the kind of the idea. That type of the type of raunchy college movies that we don't get anymore, sadly, and it's a shame because sometimes they can be really good. We've had a couple successes as of late with No Hard Feelings, but something like this, it's just a movie that knows exactly what it is and just has the time of its life with it, and it leads into a lot of good stuff. It's a very underrated little gem of a movie, and one I would highly recommend checking out. If you love old school raunchy comedies of the past, a good old-fashioned orgy is definitely one to check out. It's one of the most underrated ones we've seen so far in this time span, if you will, of raunchy comedies. Does not get talked about a lot, but it's a ton of fun overall. That's one I'd highly recommend checking out. A good old-fashioned orgy. And thus, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies. Next time we meet, we take a look at 5 movies on the second weekend of September. We have Steven Soderbergh's latest film, Contagion, a.k.a. the movie that everybody went to when COVID happened, because, we looked at this movie, and people looked at this movie and thought, this will have an answer to the COVID pandemic, and spoiler alert, it doesn't. And, needless to say, I was actually very disappointed by this movie. Really disappointed by it, and especially considering it's a Steven Soderbergh movie and it features a star-studded cast and includes Matt Damon, Gwyneth Paltrow, and Jude Law. Yeah, I didn't like this movie all that much. I'll talk more about that tomorrow, but we do have a movie that was not seen by many people, but it's a shame because it's friggin' amazing. Warrior, with Tom Hardy and also Nick Nolte among its cast, and Joel Edgerton. Very underrated film that doesn't get the attention it deserves. Kevin Hart releases one of his first stand-up movies, Laugh at My Pain. We have another bad Happy Madison movie in 2011. Nick Swardson starring in Bucky Larson, Born to Be a Star. And lastly, we'll wrap it up with the movie that I think everyone was looking forward to that weekend. It was put in 1,500 theaters, so how can nobody know about Creature? Well, yeah, you're going to find out tomorrow why that is. So, 5 films to take a look at, and we'll talk about that, as I said, tomorrow on the show. But with all that said, thank you so much for watching this, and I hope you enjoyed it, because if you did, please do me the favor and go on and hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification button. Also, don't forget to check out our playlist, and don't forget to check out the last episode we did. So with all that said, whether it's in the past, the present, or the future, I will see you at the movies. Take care.